playing and you go, man, is that how I act when I play games? Am I really being this particular kind of way? Am I enacting that kind of behavior? Maybe that's not such a good thing. I think that's really cool. You know, I mean, in other words, you learn that all good things come in moderation. I think that's a great, a great thing to learn as well. But the fact that you know, Lucky's wife takes on the extremes, and that kind of ropes him back from being in the extreme category and helping back, you know, becoming a better husband and really connecting and trying to find things that both of them can find great value in. That's a great thing. If you can use gaming as a platform to, you know, relate to your spouse or relate to someone that you care about, I think that's an awesome and powerful and wonderful thing. So, you know, that's the good. The bad. You know, this is what's interesting. I want to try to summarize the bad in this, that there are different goals and values that get attributed to the games in general. This is a very, very big topic, one I've already touched on and one I will continue to touch on as we move forward in this conversation. There are, I think, different goals and different values that get placed on games by the different cultural formations of maleness and femaleness, or otherwise known as gender, that culture really imbues upon the things that, upon media, let's just say that, content, okay? And those different goals can really expose difficulties or problems, the problematic nature of some of our different goals and the different values that get placed on those particular media, right? Now, I know that there are, for example, men generally, not all, but generally tend to like games that are very competitive, tend to like games that are less social and more kind of action-driven, reward-based, you know, like I said, competitive. And women tend to be more, again, generally, not exclusively, more drawn to games that are more social and less competitive, more creative rather than destructive, more, I would say, in depth rather than not necessarily in depth. I want to try to figure out how to say that correctly, but maybe more about the experience rather than, say, the activity. That's how I want to say it, right? So the overall experience of having people that play and the experience of the game rather than perhaps a repeated activity a la Diablo where you're clicking and killing monsters constantly, right? There is an experience to Diablo, but the idea of just kind of clicking and killing things really excites me as a gamer, and I'm sure several of you out there that are men probably relate to that too. And several of you that are women might relate to that too. I'm not saying that, but in general, I think what Lucky is pointing to in terms of the bad is that you can see how some of these constructions are problematic, how there are different values that get placed on different activities in these games, and how they expose maybe problematic nature of how we look at them, which can be a good thing too. I got to keep moving. I want to keep talking about a lot of these things, but we've got to keep going, or else this is going to be a 2-hour video. Mog talked about the idea of the lack of female characters. I thought this was something not only that I had spent a lot of time on before, but very insightful and absolutely true. But again, let's go back to what DTX 180 said. This is a male-dominated industry, and I think they still understand that the target demographic for a blockbuster game is 18 to 40, and it's ever expanding as my generation gets older. 18 to 40-year-old men. That is the key demographic. If you have a hit with that demographic, you sell a lot of games. It might not be true, guys. It's just what the market research shows everyone. So, the idea of a lack of female characters has a couple of different enactments. One, first of all, you tend to see fewer female characters. Secondly, you tend to see female characters that don't have the same kind of fleshed out thought. Maybe that's a bad pun. Same fleshed out kind of concept as a male character would be. In other words, they're a little bit less deep. Think Princess Toadstool next to someone like Mario, right? Mario has a very intricate and interesting story. Now, it might not be all that wonderful, or it might not be all that deep, to be honest, but I think we know a lot about Mario. We understand exactly what's going on, even if the goals are very simple in the game. Princess Toadstool tends to kind of just laugh and giggle and doesn't really have much of a story other than that she was kidnapped and needs Mario to come save her. Anyway, the lack of female characters is something that, could kind of highlights this perpetuating cycle. You have men that probably create these characters, and then because they want to market to men, and then because men buy those characters, they go and show them, hey, if you keep making characters like this, we'll keep buying. And it doesn't help that some of the best games I can think of, and this hits right at my thesis, the best games I can think of that feature a female protagonist have been awful sellers. Think Mirror's Edge. Think Beyond Good and Evil, right? And if you look at something like, say, Tomb Raider or Bayonetta, that I think really perpetuate a lot of the very stereotypical and problematic constructions of female gender and female sexuality, those titles sell very well versus something like Beyond Good and Evil and Mirror's Edge, which both were very disappointing in terms of sales. Even though both of them are classics, I think people look back on both of those games, Beyond Good and Evil more than Mirror's Edge, and say, this is a great game, I have no idea why this didn't sell well. One of the reasons why is probably because there was a female protagonist that kind of defied the expectations of what we normally see as a female gender construction. Point taken, Mog. Mr. Top Hat, one of our new commenters. I thought this was an interesting concept. The lack of gentlemen in online gaming communities, and I say gentlemen not as in the sense of that there are men, because there are plenty of those, but people that act as gentlemen. And this is kind of foreshadowing into some of the comments that will follow. But I have to say, this is one of the reasons why I can no longer play games on Xbox Live or even on my PC where I enable voice. That takes me right out of playing any of the, tactical squad-based games, because you have to be able to have voice in order to play, right? It takes me out of most MMOs nowadays because you need that to be able to really function in any kind of real way. There are exceptions to that rule. But I can't play those games because I can't stand the way people treat people in general, right? There's nothing in the form of manners, there is nothing in the form of social niceties, and there is certainly nothing but sexism perpetuated there. I mean, it is absolutely awful. And it's one of the reasons I absolutely had to stop playing, because it made me feel bad about society. It's one of those things, like if you continue to watch Jerry Springer, you start to think the whole world works that way. If you play online games enough, you'll start to think that everybody has these horrible, terrible views of society. Luckily, it's not true, but if you play long enough, you can convince yourself that it is. I had to stop because I couldn't take it anymore. Some of you that are women have commented that you kind of got over that and have found ways to evolve and, maybe battle through that initial wave and get past it in order to develop your own communities. That's fantastic. But for me, I couldn't take it. Now, when I go to a place like PAX East, for example, I go to a gaming convention where there's a lot of gaming people. I don't find that kind of behavior mostly. Sure, there's some of it. There's kind of that mindless geekdom. There's kind of that social awkwardness among geeks, right? I find that. But at the same time, I really don't find that kind of really insensitive, terrible behavior. I find gamers to be very wonderful people. As much as I've been to something like PAX East, I've met a lot of really great folks. And as I'm there this year, I hope to meet several of you as well. I'm sure you're wonderful people. You guys that comment on the Weekly Wringer, one of the reasons that Rue and I really wanted to tackle this website to begin with was the fact that we knew there was a great community of gamers out there that weren't freaking losers on Xbox Live or PSN, screaming 12-year-olds, profanity-laced, sexist, racist, you name it, right? There are great gamers out there, and we wanted to have a community of that ourselves, and I think we've done that. Because as you guys talk, and as I've met all of you, and have come to know all of you, I think you're all very wonderful people that I would definitely not mind playing in online gaming communities, which is one of the reasons why we've got to get that Minecraft server for the Clan of the Grey Wolf going. Anyway, not to divert the point is that I think gamers in general are great people, but I think a lot of the people that come out of the woodwork with the anonymity of Xbox Live or online gaming in general really makes it problematic, and it's something that I can't connect with anymore. And so I've retreated. Now, one of the reasons I love Skyrim so much is because I don't have to do anything with anybody else on there. If people want to come over and play, to be like, hey, let's go after this and then pass the controller, we can do that. But I don't have to get in there and listen to a 12-year-old scream and laugh at me as he kills me. Or I don't have to, see a female person in my party get berated for the fact that they just got beat by a male, or get ripped to shreds because they just defeated a male in the game, and get accused of all kinds of terrible, horrible things, many of which you guys talked about, and thank you for all keeping it clean, by the way. It turns me off completely. And the point is that that Mr. Top Hat was trying to make is that maybe if there were more gentlemen out there from the male side of things, there would be more women that would want to engage in some of these games. I have to say I think that's probably true. There are, even if it isn't true, I wish there were more people out there that had a little bit more sense on their heads, in their heads, I should say, that would get on these gaming communities, because I would have a lot more fun with it. I would be able to connect to it, and I have a funny feeling in general people would probably find it that way. If you go and you just show Xbox Live online gaming, even in Halo or something like that, to someone who's never been on a server before, never seen that kind of content, I think they'd probably be appalled, because the content and the language and everything is just terrible. It's not a place safe for children, and I think that's just terrible. Anyway, this is something that goes without saying, but another point that Mr. Top Hat made was the overt sexuality of the female characters that are out there. Let's face it, guys, and I use guys in the gender neutral sense, the concept of men in games, sexuality is almost never really the focus of a male character in a game. Sometimes it is. Think James Bond, right? James Bond is kind of this typical has this typical maleness about him. Here I am, I'm James Bond, and I'm supposed to enact these things, right? But male sexuality is never really the point and focus of games, outside of the fact that it gets really amplified by something like, say, like Duke Nukem, for example, or games that are very similar to that. Most of the times, male sexuality is not really something that gets treated. But female sexuality is something that's almost inevitable, right? It's in everything. If there's a female character, there's got to be some kind of, alluding to some kind of sexual innuendo. There is some kind of statement about that woman's physical appearance. There is the overt kind of, kind of beat you over the head with the fact that this person is sexually attracted and they're going to make a sexual pass at this person, right? Because they're a woman, or because they're attractive, so on and so forth. Now, I appreciate the glorious splendor that is the female form, maybe more than I should sometimes, but like any red-blooded male, I do appreciate that. But I also see, and I also get really freaking tired of the hypersexualization, let's call it, of female characters. It drives me crazy. Why is it that because a woman appears in a game, she has to have that kind of a dress? Why is it there's so many different, varied and diverse male characters out there, and really only one kind of female character? It blows my mind. Now, things have definitely moved, and things have definitely expanded from that. That's why I wanted to ask the question. There are a lot of great female characters out there, guys, and we should celebrate them. They're great. The point is, for the most part, we're still seeing the same old crap today in terms of gender construction.